Apple, the company behind Mac, the one that dares to think different, today is one of the most valuable companies in the world, but in the mid-90s it was a disaster. The Macintosh, one of the culture icon, was nearly irrelevant. Apple was losing money, drowning in bad decisions, and just 90 days away from bankruptcy. And yet, against all the odds, the Mac didn't just survive, it came back stronger than ever. This is the story of the fall and rise of macOS. When the Macintosh launched in 1984, Apple promised a new way of computing. Forget text command, this was drag, drop, and click. It was personal, it was human. The 1984 Super Bowl commercial pointed at Apple as the rebel fighting IBM's domination. The Mac wasn't just a huge financial hit at first, but it built a loyal following. It was loved in education, publishing, and design. It had a mouse, fonts, desktop publishing tools, things PC wouldn't master for years. For creatives, the Mac was magical. But behind the magic, Apple had a problem: losing the war to Microsoft. By the 90s, Microsoft was catching up. Windows 3.1 brought a graphical interface to PCs, and in 1995, Windows 95 changed everything. It was modern, affordable, and came preloaded on millions of computers. The macOS, meanwhile, was falling behind. Apple's System 7 through macOS 9 were still built on the same fragile foundation from the 80s. No real multitasking, constant crashes. The spinning beach ball became infamous. And then came bad business decisions. The overpriced Newton PDA. And the worst of all, licensing out macOS to clone makers like Power Computing instead of expanding Apple's market. It stole Apple's own customers. Leadership was in chaos. John Scully was ousted. Michael Spilder came back and went. Then Jill Amelio took over. None could stop Apple's decline. By 1996, Apple was losing nearly $1 billion per year. Analysts predict bankruptcy within the 90 days. The once revolutionary Macintosh was on life support. Next, and the return of Steve Jobs. But in Apple's darkest hour, salvation came from an unlikely source. Apple needed a modern operating system. They looked at BOS from B Inc. But negotiation collapsed. Instead, they turned to Next, a company founded by none other than Steve Jobs, the man Apple had fired 11 years earlier. In December 1996, Apple bought Next for $429 million. And with it, Steve Jobs came back. At first, just an advisor, but with months, he outmaneuvered the board, and by 1997, Steve Jobs was CEO again. His first move, drastic cuts. He killed dozens of confusing products. No more printers, cameras, or Newtons. He shut down the clone program. Apple will focus on a few core products, and one of them, the ruthless focus, was stepped on in the Mac's revival. Microsoft saves Apple, but there was still a massive problem. Apple was out of cash. And then came one of the most shocking deals in history. At Macworld 1997, Steve Jobs stood on stage and announced that Apple's greatest rival, Microsoft, was investing $150 million. In exchange, Apple will make Internet Explorer the default browser for Mac, and Microsoft promised to keep developing Office for Mac. The audience booed when Bill Gates appeared on the giant screen. But Jobs knew, without this deal, Apple might not survive long enough to rebuild. The iMac and the new era. Then came the turning point, the iMac G3. Designed by Johnny Ive, it was colorful, playful, and unlike any other computer in the world has seen, no floppy drive, just USB. It was bold, and it worked. The iMac sold millions and put Apple back on the spotlight. But hardware wasn't enough. The Mac's old operating system was still outdated. So in 2001, Apple released macOS 10 10.0. Based on Next Step, it brought modern features, true multitasking, memory protection, and the shiny Aqua interface. It was slow at first, but it laid the foundation for everything macOS is today. The ecosystem and internet transition. In 2001, the iPod launched, then iTunes Store. This pulled millions into Apple's orbit. In 2006, Apple made another daring move, switching from PowerPC to Intel processor. It was risky, but it worked. macOS became faster, more compatible, and could even run Windows. The transition silenced critics who thought Apple couldn't keep up. And in 2007, the iPhone launched. Suddenly, owning a Mac meant you were part of seamless Apple ecosystem. Features like iTunes Sync, iCloud, and iMessage tied everything together. By the end of 2000s, the Mac wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. macOS today and Apple Silicon. In the 2010s, macOS kept evolving. The App Store came to the Mac, features like handoff and continuity blurred the lines between iPhone, iPad, and Mac. But the biggest moment came in 2020, when Apple unveiled its own chips, Apple Silicon. The M1 shocked the world with its speed and efficiency. Suddenly, Macs weren't just stylish alternative, they were the best laptops and desktop you could buy. And the thing is, they're still the same today, 5 years later. Even though Windows tried to make their own ARM version, nobody can compete with Apple when it comes to performance, power consumptions, and everything else. So yeah, I really hope you guys this video. This is the first time I'm trying to do something like this. If you do like it, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next one.